Picking right back up where we left off, I'm talking about the phone call between Amber and Scott. It was a recorded phone call on January 6th. It was a pretty long call. So please go back and listen to the last two videos where I'm documenting all the calls between them and reading from all the transcripts. It's not as boring as it sounds, I promise you. There's some good stuff in here. But the January 6th call, this is where she's really got him back up against the wall, and he admits that Lacey is his wife, that Lacey is missing. They've been searching for her. He repeatedly says, I think we're going to find her alive. I think we're going to find her alive. And then Amber's kind of like, Scott, why did you lie to me? Why did you tell me all these things? Where have you been? What's going on? And she does say, like, do you have anything to do with it? And it's interesting because there's a part where this starts to shift. Like, again, part of me thinks he's got to know she's recording, or he at least suspects it, because he's so evasive with every single answer. Well, I can't really discuss that now. We'll talk about that later. Like he bats her back a couple of different times when she says, well, why can't you tell me now? It's just not the right time. I'll tell you later. Once she's found, I'll sit down and we'll have a conversation. I think he's wanting to talk to her in person. Maybe he's suspect of the phone. I don't know. But he keeps kind of evading and obviously telling more lies. I mean, that's what this guy does. And she keeps asking questions, and she's noticeably, I'm not even listening to it, just reading the transcripts, I can hear her frustration, right? And she keeps asking questions. He's like, And she's like, what was that, Scott? Scott, talk to me. What did you just say? And he's like, well, sweetie, I can't talk about it right now. And she's like, why can't you, Scott? Why can't you, Scott? Like she's going, like she's trying. And at one point, you hear the frustration in her voice because she says, so you're married, she's pregnant. What were you going to do when the baby was born, Scott? Were you just still going to pretend to be with me and like hope that all that was going to be okay? Like, what were you going to do, Scott? And he's like, sweetie, I don't know. I can't talk about this right now. And she says, do you know how this makes me feel? Now it's obvious that she's humiliated, right? She believed him, and she's worried about how does she look in all of this. And she says, I put your picture in all those Christmas cards. So she had sent out, this is the first I'd heard of that, she'd sent out Christmas cards with the two of them, photos of the two of them together as her Christmas cards. You can hear it. I mean, when you listen to it, you can hear it in her voice, but when you read it, she's stammering. You can tell she's frustrated. You can tell she's like having to take a breath and keep going. And she's on a mission from the police. So she's trying really hard to just keep getting answers. Well, why, Scott? Why did you tell me that? What did you mean by that? And she says, back on December 9th, when you told me that you lost your wife, what did you mean by that, Scott? Was she missing at the time? Did you know she was going to go missing? What did you know, Scott? And again, he just manages to go, oh, no. I love my wife. I love Lacey. She's missing, and I just hope we find her. Well, at the end of this call, Amber says, I don't think you should ever call me again. And he says, okay, I won't. So this to me is kind of also a breakup call. But my guess is the police aren't done with her, because then Amber resumes calling him. They talk on the 7th, they talk on the 8th. It's all very brief. There's just a couple calls going back and forth. On January 12th, there's a call. It is at 6:04 p.m. It's Exhibit 198A. He calls her, and this is a 36-page transcript. He apologizes for their last call. Sorry to have done this to her. Now, she also reads a letter. She had written Scott a letter. It sounds like it was dated right around maybe Christmas Eve. She'd written Scott a letter but never sent it. In her letter, she is saying when he gets back into town, she's hoping that they can resume. She really wants to be, she says on your grounds, but I think what she means is like on your turf. She wants to go see his house. She wants to meet his friends. She wants to see his life. And she's reading all of that in the letter. That's when Scott tells her, don't worry, all of this is going to be resolved in time. When we find Lacey, then you and I can resolve this. There's another one that was admitted into court. It was a January 14th call. It happened at 11:58. It's Exhibit 198C and 199C. That transcript is 25 pages. As we keep going, on January 15th at 9:47 p.m. Now, January 15th is the date that the police went and told Lacey's family about Amber. So there's a call that night. This is mostly about Ayanna. Because Amber's saying, oh, you should hear her. She can put so many words together. She says, mommy, cargo. And he's like, that's really cute. So most of the call is about her daughter. There is a point where he seems to be asking Amber what she knows and what she's seen. Because in an earlier video, I said Amber doesn't have TV, internet, computer, nothing in her home. So I think he's trying to get an understanding of how up to date she is on things. And he says, well, did you see, did you watch Fox News today? Did you see Greta Van Susteren? Did you see this? And she's like, well, I saw this interview and I saw that interview. And then she changes it back to Ayanna, and they just keep talking about Ayanna. On January 17th at 5:16 p.m., this call ends up being 13 pages of transcript. And the big takeaway here is that Amber is saying she's been visited by detectives. And the detectives are asking her where she was on December 23rd. And Scott's like, why would they think? She's like, they think I have something to do with this, Scott. This is a great police tactic right here. They're thinking if they can make Amber convince Scott that she might be suspect, that she might go down for his crimes, he'll come forward out of love for her and admit to clear her name. He'll say something that clears her name. And so she says, the police are coming here. They're questioning me. I don't remember where I was on the 23rd. Scott, do you? Like, can you tell them everything you did that day? And Scott says, well, I was working. And then I took Lacey to the gynecologist. Like, I can remember where I was. And she's like, well, I was with Ayanna all day, but how do I prove that? What if they think I have something to do? So that's the whole conversation there. The 24th is the day Amber does her press conference. On the 25th, Scott calls her at 4:15 p.m. to tell her how brave she is. And then calls her back at 6:28. This is a 10-page transcript. And they talk to each other about, boy, the media is really harassing both of us. They're kind of commiserating. And then at one point she goes, is there a specific reason you called? Right? Like, she's like, why are you calling me? And he tells her, I just want to tell you were very brave. And I'm looking to also do something in the press. I'm going to find an interviewer that I want to talk to. Then he goes and he records the Diane Sawyer interview. And on January 28th at 2:38 p.m., Scott calls Amber, and it's 10 pages of transcript. And at this point, this is where Mexico on business. And so a lot of the calls are like disconnected. He says something about a payphone. So there's parts of this that's really confusing because he's out of the country again. There's a call on February 7th. This one's important. It's at 10:37 p.m. And they've mostly been commiserating about the press and what's going on and how they're feeling. There's very little conversation about I think she's kind of given up on the why didn't you tell me about your wife thing. And now it's just listening to see if he says anything. He says that he would love to sit down and talk to her in person. Could he come see her to explain things to her? And she says, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea. The press will follow you. If the press could find you in Mexico, Scott, they're surely going to find you in Fresno. You can't come here. February 8th, there's 2 more calls where Scott calls Amber. That's 7 pages of transcript. On February 10th, starting at 8:55 a.m., there are 3 calls from Scott to Amber. This is him calling to wish her a happy birthday. February 10th is her birthday. It also happens to be ironic because that's the day that Lacey was due to deliver Connor. I can't believe this is going to take a 4th video. I'm so sorry. Please keep coming back because there's just a tiny bit more to cover.